Hello to all dear Manhwa fans. I hope you're enjoying a fantastic day. First of all, I want to send a very special greeting to everyone who shared their comments on the previous video. Now, moving on to the special shoutout, Beans N7Q, who left the first comment on the previous video for the second time. You are the fastest of our followers. Thank you so much. And I wanted to let you know that the first 4 comments recommending a manhwa will be voted on to be the summary for Friday. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this incredible summary. But she fell silent halfway through her sentence, which sparked Jun's curiosity as he wanted to understand what Somin was referring to. Visibly embarrassed, Somin asked, if you had the chance to have a mass with Yeonji, would you take it? This left Jun completely baffled. He exclaimed that no, he would never do something like that. However, Somin insisted he simply answer yes or no, without further explanations. Even so, Jun was certain that Yeonji would never go out with someone like him, a thought Somin couldn't understand, given how negative he was about himself. Once again, she asked if someone like him would leave Yeonji alone, something Jun swore firmly. This somehow reassured Somin a little, but it didn't take long for her to joke, saying Yeonji would never be with someone like Jun, calling him a poor beggar. This irritated Jun, who asked why she doubted him so much. Instead of apologizing, Somin recalled seeing with her own eyes how Junah and Jun had shared a mass. This threw Jun off because he knew Somin was right. She, curious, asked what kind of relationship he had with Junah to have shared a mass, especially since Junah didn't seem like someone who would do charity work. Jun wanted to know why it mattered so much to Somin. With a tone that was both amused and sarcastic, Somin replied that Jun had invaded her home and discovered her secrets. The least he could do was be honest with her. She also reminded him that as secret friends, he should trust her at least a little, but if he wasn't going to tell her anything, then she'd rather return home. With that final warning, she asked again what had happened with Junah. Jun wasn't sure how to define his relationship with Junah. Although it was casual, it had taken that form due to the atmosphere of the moment. He knew everything had started with that bet, and their situation had been ambiguous from the beginning, so he couldn't find a way to explain it. He tried to convince himself it was something simple. For him, they fit perfectly and had encouraged each other, but to Somin it sounded a bit absurd. Nervously, Jun tried to justify that he and Junah got along too well, even comparing it to a marriage, although even he didn't know what he was talking about. Somin, for her part, recognized that ever since Junah had done that, Jun's skills had improved considerably. Jun was aware of this and didn't mind, though he couldn't help but notice that Somin didn't believe him. Seeing her expression, he realized nothing he said was convincing. Somin sighed and made a comment about encouragement and comfort. Even though he didn't really know what she meant, Somin finally told Jun that it was late, that she had to leave, and to forget about the whole matter. Jun tried to ask what would happen the next day, but Somin didn't have a clear answer and left without saying more, leaving him completely alone. Once by himself, Jun began yelling at himself, calling himself an idiot for saying so many stupid things. From any perspective, he knew he had ruined everything and that the situation had spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, Somin seemed deeply lost in thought. The following afternoon, Jun and Junah found themselves in a heated argument. Both were upset over a match in which Junah hadn't played as part of the team. The situation quickly escalated, and their insults grew more intense until Junah lost control and began hitting Jun. Suddenly, an upbeat voice interrupted the scene. It was Somin, who had arrived to practice. At first, she thought it would be exciting, but upon seeing the chaos, her enthusiasm faded. Junah and Do-hyun greeted her, though Yeonji seemed the most pleased. Looking over at her, Somin noticed that Yeonji was simply smiling, which made her feel a bit uncomfortable. That night, Jun and Somin continued practicing. Jun had insisted that she stay, though he couldn't help but remind her they had wasted time eating chicken, and the tournament was only 2 days away. However, something about Somin's behavior caught Jun's attention. She seemed unexpectedly obedient that day. Even so, Somin asked him to back off, accusing him of being a pervert taking advantage of the situation. This led Jun to think her obedience was just an illusion. Curious, Somin asked if he had really improved his skills that much. It seemed as though she was looking for something. Jun understood her skepticism since they were just starting their training, but Somin didn't hesitate to throw another critique his way. Even if he acted like a coach, she felt he was a fraud. On the other hand, she was curious if Somin had had a good conversation with Yeonji. Somin quickly shut down the topic, telling him not to meddle and that she would handle it herself. Despite her attitude, Somin wanted Jun to take responsibility for helping her improve, as she had put her streams on hold for the time being. At that moment, she admitted that she trusted him more than she wanted to admit, and was willing to make an effort. That comment made Jun blush, realizing that Somin could be sincere at times. Shortly after, she wanted to know how much longer they were going to play and if Jun planned to take a break. Nervously, Jun agreed, even offering to get her a coffee. but So-min declined. Talking about her skills, Jun said they were fine for the tournament. So-min, skeptical, thought her level was at a master rank despite not practicing much. Noticing Jun had gone quiet, she scolded him for not giving her more compliments. Feeling awkward, Jun told her she had done a good job during practice, but So-min mocked him, saying it wasn't enough and that he seemed to be forcing his words. This annoyed Jun, who believed her attitude stemmed from an inflated ego. To change the subject, Jun invited her to dinner, but So-min refused, saying she wouldn't eat with someone like him because it might make her vomit. Frustrated, Jun asked what he could do for her. So-min, on her part, said she needed more work or practice because she was stressed and considering quitting. This irritated Jun, who thought about smacking her on the head before she left. Suddenly, So-min remembered something and brought it up. She mentioned the conversation they'd had the day before, but Jun noticed her face was red and asked if she was feeling okay. Embarrassed, she told him to shut up and listen. She was talking about the encouragement she had mentioned earlier, and this time, she directly asked him to help her with it too, leaving Jun completely stunned. Jun began reflecting on So-min. She was the only person who had hated him from the very beginning, and still did to this day. Trying to understand her request, he came to the conclusion that So-min had just asked him to have a mass with her. At that moment, no matter how much he thought about it, Jun couldn't understand and felt like he was missing something important. Nervously, he stood up from his seat and with an uncertain voice, apologized, insisting that, as he had said before, he had no intention of doing that with her. So-min was stunned, unable to believe what she was hearing. Jun's exaggerated reaction left her speechless for a moment, until she finally clarified that wasn't what she meant. Not knowing what to do with him, she explained that she simply wanted motivation through words. Embarrassed by his reaction, Jun hid under his desk while So-min called him a pervert, just as she expected of him. In his mind, Jun couldn't help but think he was an idiot and fully agreed with her. Trying to salvage some dignity, Jun asked if that kind of encouragement was what So-min wanted. She reminded him that, as her coach, it was his duty. However, she also pointed out that she didn't like feeling as if she were being played with like a puppet. Jun retorted that it was his first time coaching someone. So-min then wanted to know if he had noticed anything while playing. This led Jun to reflect on words of encouragement and how he himself had never received any. Suddenly, an idea crossed his mind. He decided to be honest and admitted that he couldn't say much about her current level, but he still wanted to congratulate her. He acknowledged the effort she was putting in and understood that even though some things might seem difficult at the moment, not giving up made her admirable. Jun lied, saying he knew a friend who could never do what So-min was doing, someone who always regretted their decisions and preferred to run away. He added that the reason this friend gave up their fight was that the dream they had chased for so long never came true. Jun advised So-min that, even if she didn't like someone like him or felt that he was forcing her to change, she should know she was incredible for trying. According to him, with that mindset, she could overcome any obstacle, something his supposed friend never achieved. Deep down, Jun knew those words weren't for So-min, but for himself, as that friend didn't exist. It was a metaphor for his own past. Despite this, Jun decided to commit himself and assured So-min that, from now on, he would do his best to support her. Looking at her, he noticed that So-min was completely flushed. Worried, he asked if she was okay, but So-min, embarrassed, lied, saying her discomfort was because Jun had said unpleasant things that disgusted her. Even so, unexpectedly, So-min asked if he didn't hate her. She admitted that, from her perspective, she now understood she hadn't done things right, and was surprised that he was consoling her. Nervously, Jun explained that he had done it because it was so sudden. So-min understood his reaction, and with a slight tone of irony, concluded that it now meant it was okay for him at that moment. Taking the opportunity, she brought up the encouragement she wanted again, and asked if he could do that for her too. This left Jun completely flushed, as it seemed far too unexpected. Just then, the chalice began to glow, which heightened the tension. Confused, Jun asked So-min if she really wanted to do it and if she was sure she wouldn't regret it. So-min, visibly uncomfortable, replied that she didn't think it was something she could regret. A little later, So-min was sitting, staring at him intently, wondering what he would do. Jun, for his part, felt insecure, trapped in his thoughts, trying to decide what to do first. Although he had enthusiastically agreed, he had no idea how to proceed. It seemed strange, almost absurd, and the situation felt as confusing as his beginning with Hyun-ah. He thought about using that experience as a reference, though he wasn't sure it would work. With some nervousness, he asked So-min if it was her first time at a mass. The girl reacted immediately, shouting that, of course, it wasn't her first time, and added that she had plenty of experience. Hyun, upon hearing her, thought that perhaps he shouldn't have asked that question. In his thoughts, he convinced himself that someone like So-min, a girl who streamed online, must be surrounded by many guys interested in her. However, in an unexpected gesture, Jun approached and took one of the loaves Somin was carrying. Noticing that she blushed, he decided to change the course of the conversation. Before continuing, he asked her a direct question. Why was she asking him to do that if she didn't like him? Somin, visibly offended, exclaimed that she couldn't believe he would ask her that after taking her bread. Nonetheless, she decided to explain herself, admitting that she was also a girl and, as such, was curious about these things. However, she clarified that even though she didn't generally like boys, that didn't mean she was comfortable with the situation either. Still confused, June seized the opportunity to joke and reminded her that she had mentioned having tons of experience. Somin, although embarrassed, reaffirmed that yes, she had a lot of experience. However, with a more honest tone, she confessed that he was the first to ask her for a mass. Somin narrated that her initial purpose had been to find a vulnerability in Hyun, something that would affect or motivate him to approach her. After reviewing the video several times, she was convinced that Hyun had done something, although she couldn't identify what it was. Every time she heard, "I won't let you go," she felt something didn't add up about the events. That phrase echoed in her mind. Meanwhile, June was struck by Somin's words. In his mind, he wondered if it was true that he was the first person to ask her for a mass. He wasn't sure if what he had just heard was real. As he tried to move away, Somin stopped him and asked him to continue, grabbing the loaves. Although Jun stammered, he mentioned that it was the first time he had shown them. Somin, with a smile, responded that there was nothing wrong with it, as at some point, he would have to give them to someone. That person had to be someone who wouldn't give up on her, and that person was Jun. She considered it a kind of reward, which left him even more thoughtful, wondering what he had done to deserve such recognition. Somin added that, still being pure of heart, she hoped June would see this as an honor. Speechless, June tried to process the situation while Somin asked him if he really wanted to continue with the mass. For June, everything felt different. While he had entered her house before this time, he felt like he could achieve anything. He agreed to continue as they were, but asked again if it was her first mass. Somin confirmed, and when June asked if she had kissed anyone, she timidly shook her head. With that response, June leaned in and gave her a tender kiss while performing a jutsu. Then, he asked how her first kiss had been. For Somin, it wasn't a big deal. It was just a kiss. But she noticed that June seemed a bit smug, which slightly annoyed her. Suddenly, June had an idea for the mass and pointed out something they could use. After a while, he asked Somin if she felt uncomfortable, as they had found several useful things in the club. Somin explained that they needed them for breaks between matches, as Juna had mentioned. However, when she asked why he was changing, June explained that he tended to sweat a lot during masses. Embarrassed, Somin stammered, searching for an explanation but ended up blurting out, almost without thinking, if they were going to pray until they sweated. This left Jun flustered, though he understood that she was nervous because it was her first mass and also because she was a girl. Despite this, he couldn't help but think about how cute she looked, feeling a fervent faith within him. With determination, he assured Somin that he would guide her on the path of God until she was exhausted, promising prayers all night long. He even ordered her to change immediately, something Somin questioned, thinking June was getting too excited about having a mass with her. He sincerely admitted that he was excited, though he now doubted whether being so honest was the right thing to do. At that moment, Somin asked for his help to change, which made him reflect that his plan had worked. After a while, now changed, they shared a second kiss, and June asked Somin if she was ready. She didn't know, but when he noticed an evil aura emanating from her, he assumed it was time to pray. Jun searched for a rosary to hold. Intrigued, Somin asked what he was doing, to which he replied that it was something Juna had recommended. However, upon mentioning Juna, he quickly asked her to forget it. June began reading the Bible, but warned Somin that if she felt any pain in her heart, she should tell him immediately. Meanwhile, Hyun couldn't help but worry. He feared that Somin wouldn't be able to bear the weight of all the corruption in her heart, which caused her to let out a faint cry of anguish. June considered Somin's reaction understandable, especially since it was her first mass. Though slightly embarrassed, she insisted that nothing was wrong. June continued reading the Bible, but soon noticed that Somin was unusually quiet. This led him to stop and ask if she was acting. Slightly annoyed, Somin told him to stop being ridiculous and denied faking anything. She explained timidly that prayers were supposed to sound like that. Jun couldn't help but think about how adorable she looked and reassured her that it was completely normal. He explained that during first masses, it was common to have doubts about doing things correctly. Gently taking her hands, he told her that her voice was too beautiful and that he wanted to hear it always. But suddenly, Hyun noticed a change in Somin's heart. The corruption within her seemed to manifest, turning the situation potentially dangerous. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel excited by how lovely she was. It was then that Somin felt a strange tingling in her chest and, frightened, asked Jun to hug her. As he embraced her, Jun realized that her soul seemed to be purifying. However, Somin let out a loud scream that left her exhausted. Hyun, worried, noticed that she seemed to have had some sort of divine revelation. He helped her lie down and went to get something to help her relax. Even though Somin felt pain, she also experienced a strange sense of inner peace. Convinced that everything was over, Somin got up to go change. However, Jun stopped her by grabbing her hand. She assured him that they were done, but Jun pointed out that the chalice was still glowing and that the holy water had not yet been used. Somin, somewhat confused, mentioned that in the religious videos she had watched, both people usually found inner peace at the same time. Hyun, trying to cheer her up, explained that this concept demonstrated how pure of heart she was. However, he commented that he seemed like a completely different person during the Mass. He suggested that if she wanted to extinguish the chalice's glow, she should go ask Juna for help. This made Jun think that Somin was once again doing whatever she wanted, something that frustrated him. Although he wanted to scold her, he remembered that as a trainer, he needed to be professional, especially since Somin was just a beginner in these matters. To Jun, this situation felt like a matter of life or death. He explained to Somin that having a Mass with Juna wasn't something ordinary, which angered her as she felt compared. Jun, trying to clarify, said that she was the one who had mentioned Hyun-ah and that the comparison was valid. To him, the essence of a Mass was that both people achieved inner peace, and it didn't seem fair for Somin to leave without accomplishing that. Annoyed, Somin told him to shut up, saying his insistence was irritating. Jun complained that although he liked that it was Somin's first Mass, she had ruined it. He declared that he would stop training them, which made Somin even angrier. Noticing her reaction, Jun was surprised, as he hadn't expected her to take his words so seriously. Somin, on the other hand, realized that if she didn't confront Jun, he wouldn't stop. Finally, Jun decided he needed to be honest with her. Before continuing, he warned her that what he was about to say might upset her, but he felt the need to express it. Confused, Somin told him it wouldn't bother her as long as it wasn't something weird. Nervous, Hyun asked her not to get mad, which only increased Somin's confusion. When he ordered her to open her mind, Somin was left speechless, then insulted him, accusing him of being crazy. Kyun thought his plan had failed, while Omin, visibly annoyed, reflected that boys lost their minds when near a pretty woman. She insulted him and expressed her regret for having shared a Mass with him, determined to leave. Hyun kept apologizing, feeling he had lost control of the situation. Jun couldn't help but feel guilty, believing he had ruined everything. However, he also wondered why Somin had suddenly started insulting him. While reflecting, he noticed that she was looking at a picture of a puppy on her phone and glancing at him out of the corner of her eye. This left him speechless. It seemed like Somin wanted to keep praying, but this time for her puppy's well-being. Although Somin insisted Jun stop reading the Bible, he continued with the prayers. She protested, but Jun replied that it was what she had asked for. He confessed that he actually enjoyed reading that way, especially since Somin had shown her tender side by sharing the picture of her puppy. In his mind, Jun thought that maybe Somin secretly had a taste for Maso Siare, though she denied it. While Jun continued praying fervently, Somin asked him to stop. This time, Jun obeyed. But when she asked why he had stopped, he reminded her that it had been her request. To tease her, he added that if she truly wanted him to continue, she would have to say it clearly. This made Somin feel embarrassed, but it also allowed her to see a more playful side of Jun. Somin finally understood that she had to give in to move forward. Facing Jun's condition that she apologize face-to-face for everything she had done, she reluctantly accepted. Stammering, she managed to apologize sincerely this time. Upon hearing her, Jun blushed. He couldn't believe he had gone so far just to hear her apology. But he felt this was the perfect moment to guide her back to God's path. As the prayers grew more intense, Somin began to enjoy the experience, confessing that it felt right to purify the soul. To cleanse Somin's corruption, they both used holy water to free themselves from what was affecting them. Somin once again remembered how she used to see people as trash. Her memory returned to her high school days when she was bullied by her classmates because her social status was far below theirs. However, in the midst of that situation, one person stood up to defend her, Yeonji. She not only confronted the girls who bullied her, but also told Somin that her name was beautiful and that she shouldn't be ashamed. From that day on, Yeonji took care of Somin, highlighting how lovely she was and mentioning that they lived nearby, which allowed them to start seeing each other frequently. A few years later, Yeonji told Somin that she planned to form a new club, an idea that had come from a recommendation by one of her unis. Although she didn't yet have a clear idea of the club's details or members, she asked So-min for help because she knew she was very skilled at video games. Over the months, Yeonji always tried to comfort So-min, repeating that people were cruel simply because they could be, and that it wasn't So-min's fault. She assured So-min that those people didn't really know her, and that they were wrong. More importantly, Yeonji promised to keep the club running, allowing So-min to step away from streaming if she wanted to. With determination, she assured her that she would never give up on her and would always be by her side. In the present, the memory of those words and moments with Yeonji intertwined with what Jun had recently told her, that he wouldn't leave, that he wouldn't let her go, and that they would face difficulties together. Moved by these thoughts, So-min, without saying anything, hugged Jun tightly. Jun, somewhat surprised by the gesture, asked her if she was okay. So-min, with a slight blush on her cheeks, nodded silently. In response, Hyun attempted to lower her, but before he could do so, she took his face in her hands, looked him directly in the eyes, and with a shy yet sincere smile told him, "It's okay, coach." After a while, So-min asked if everything was over. Hyun confirmed that it was and suggested she rest. However, in his mind, Jun couldn't understand the sudden change in So-min's attitude. This calm behavior was perplexing and even a bit intimidating. As he thought about clearing things up, So-min approached him again, which made him nervous and confused. Hyun asked what she was doing, and with a determined attitude, she replied that she wanted to continue praying. Jun, surprised, reminded her that she had mentioned wanting to rest and even go home, but So-min had changed her mind. To her, the mass didn't seem so important anymore, but she wanted to continue praying a bit longer to discover what Jun meant by praying all night. She asked her coach to instruct her further, this time with a firm and determined attitude. When he turned to tell her that everything was fine, he became completely embarrassed when he realized So-min was already ready to continue with the reading. This completely disarmed him. He couldn't refuse something like that. Without further ado, they resumed the prayers. This time, it wasn't just a second or third round, but they reached the fourth, seeking that much-desired peace in their souls. During this session, Hyun showed So-min a yoga pose that she found quite embarrassing. Meanwhile, Hyun, with a mischievous smile, asked her why she no longer called him coach. So-min denied having stopped doing so, though Jun clearly noticed she was lying. He decided to give her an alternative. She could call him something else, whispering in her ear a suggestion that left So-min completely red-faced. Although So-min strongly refused to follow the idea, Jun insisted that she be honest with herself. Since he said it, Hyun had noticed a radical change in her attitude. Finally, he pressed her to the point of warning that he would stop the mass if she didn't do it. This led to So-min, although reluctantly, trying it. However, as she tried to speak, she ended up cursing Jun's game, as everything was a nuisance to her. Despite her protests, So-min finally confessed, her face flushed with embarrassment, that it was the holy water from her coach. Hyun kunne ikke tro hvad han havde hørt. Although he was impressed, he decided to maintain his calm attitude. So-min, embarrassed, asked him to stop staring at her and started insulting him to mask her nervousness. Hyun, however, smiled widely and congratulated her. He added in a joking tone that she would now be known as the team's whole. This infuriated So-min, who threatened to let him know how dare he say something like that. Jun, laughing, reminded her that those words had come out of her mouth, which So-min tried to justify as something forced by him. For Jun, this exchange was a sign that moving forward, So-min might follow his recommendations. He wanted to take this moment to listen to her thank him. So-min, stammering, managed to say a thank you while calling him coach, leaving Jun with the certainty that he had found the way to deal with someone as grumpy as her. A little later, Jun wanted to ask So-min something, specifically about why she was in the club. Upon hearing this, So-min became intrigued and wanted to know why he was interested. However, Hyun didn't have a particular reason. He ended up finding out that So-min used the money she earned from her streams to pay for the club's maintenance. She also confessed that she had hired someone to raise her account to the master rank. This piqued Jun's curiosity as to why she had gone so far, suggesting it could be because of Yeonji. So-min fell silent. To her, the topic didn't seem so important, something that Jun also knew deep down. Although he had mentioned it just to fill the moment, Jun still felt the club needed something more from So-min. That's why the boy approached her, hugged her, and affectionately told her that for that day, the spirits had ended. However, he asked her for a favor, something that left So-min a bit confused. The next morning, in the club and in front of all the girls, So-min confessed that she had used an ELO booster to raise her account to the master rank. She took the moment to apologize to her friends for deceiving them for so long. She admitted she was aware of her actions and intended to leave the club, hoping that would make them happy. Juna was shocked to discover that So-min hadn't reached her rank legitimately. She didn't understand why she was getting herself into such a big problem, although at the same time, she couldn't help but think that it was something she would want to say if she were in So-min's place. On the other hand, she felt a sense of tenderness seeing how cute Somin looked, so embarrassed. It turned out that the girls already knew that Somin had used a host. They were just waiting for her to admit it. However, they didn't give much importance to the matter, nor were they bothered that she had boasted about a rank that wasn't hers. Upon hearing this, So-min couldn't help but scream, asking why they had never told her anything. Jeonji calmly intervened, explaining that it was because So-min was part of their gaming club. She also confessed that she was proud of her for what she had done. She approached and hugged her, acknowledging that So-min had probably gone through difficult moments and had reflected a lot before being honest with everyone. That's why she thanked So-min and asked her to be more sincere from now on. This moved So-min to tears, and between sobs, she apologized to Yi for the guilt she had carried all that time. Later, Juna approached Jun to question him about what had happened between him and So-min. From her perspective, it was suspicious that someone would change their attitude overnight. Hun tried to explain that he had simply had an honest conversation with her, but Juna looked at him with disbelief. After a moment, she changed her tone and began congratulating him, saying that she had expected that kind of result from him. After all, things had turned out well. Of course, Joni didn't overlook how Juna and Jun interacted, especially Juna's compliments about how well he had raised him, almost as if he were her son. This made Yeonji look at her with a cold, distant expression. A little later, Yeonji congratulated Jun for his hard work, something he preferred not to be mentioned. However, Jun wanted to know if she had gathered him to reflect again. Jeonji shook her head with a smile and explained that she just wanted to thank him for what he had done with So-min. She admitted that she had a special relationship with her, and that she didn't feel capable of asking her to stop doing things like using the host. According to Jeonji, if So-min had ended up resorting to that, it was partly her fault. Upon hearing these words, Jun understood that Yeonji had used it. This left her speechless for a moment, but then she sincerely apologized, assuring him that it wasn't her initial intention and asking if it bothered him. Jun knew that in a way, she had been manipulating him, although not maliciously. He understood that from the beginning, Yeonji hadn't intended for So-min to leave the club. If she ever had to choose between her friend or the club, it was clear that Yeonji would always take the predictable path. Despite understanding all that, there was something Jun couldn't decipher. His mind went back to the moment when So-min was crying. He knew that Yeonji was that kind of person, someone constant and faithful to her way of being since they were young. Nothing had changed. Hoon accepted that Yeonji was using him, and it didn't bother him too much, but he couldn't help feeling curious. He wanted to understand more about Yeonji and the other girls in the club. For him, it wasn't clear what the club really meant or why Yeonji had founded it in the first place. Upon hearing this, Joni fell silent, contemplating her words. Then she broke the silence and asked Jun a question. She wanted to know what his secret was for having caught the attention of both Juna and So-min, and if he could teach her how to do it too. And that concludes this part of the manhwa. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did telling it. If so, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share this video with your friends. We want to read your comments below. Remember, the more support this video gets, the faster we'll bring the continuation. See you in the next episode, take care, and see you soon.